This is a conversation between myself and filmmaker Antonio Hernandez. Antonio and I have something in common. We're both men who made documentaries about women's wrestling. Antonio just released the documentary about African American rising wrestling star Trish Adora. And I made a documentary called Lady Wrestler, the amazing untold story of African American women in the ring, which traces the history of black women in pro wrestling back to the 1950s and includes interviews with legends like Ramona Isbell and Ethel Johnson. I hope you enjoy this interview and let me know what you think. Antonio, thanks again for making the time to do this. I just figured we could do like a follow-up talk about our
Uh-huh.
impressions of each other's work. So I mean, did you want to go first or did you want me to go first? Because I got to watch I think I got to see all the episodes of Indelible,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and I watched Trisha's episode again. So I mean, you're welcome to go first if you want to. Ask me
Uh,
anything about the documentary or give me the wrestling documentary. Or give me your ask me any questions, or it's up to you.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a few things I'm really surprised at. I think I told you that I think especially Ethel mentioned kind of like her challenges as
Hmm.
a black woman in that time. And it's funny that Trish kind of said the same thing. I didn't certain things I kind of didn't want to put in the doc because I felt like it would kind of take away from her personal story. But she mentioned um, kind of just dealing with being a black woman in the South, and that's now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and she mentioned kind of feeling that she had to work a little bit harder.
Right.
Um, but also she's not dealing with kind of the outright like racism or some of those challenges at that time. And I think now there's a lot of schools and opportunities that weren't available back then.
You mean like
So I think,
training for wrestlers that
yeah,
weren't
training
available then?
facilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's been able to get trained like the Dudley Boys that she mentioned. I didn't mention this in the film, but she talks about how she's also been training with Ring of Honor.
Okay.
So that's, I guess that will be probably the number 3 or 4 promotion now in the
Hmm.
U.S. They were at one point like very heralded for kind of the work they've been doing, their talent. They kind of been sliding down just because of their booking and not having the talent that they used to. But they're still running training facilities. So up until the shutdown, she was training there, which is a big step up, like I said. So, and then she's had opportunities in Canada and Japan. And I think Ethel mentioned Canada.
Yeah, Canada
Yeah,
and Japan. Yeah,
yeah,
she and her
Canada.
sister says
So that
yeah.
was funny there. So she mentioned both of those, and I was like, "Well, Trish mentioned that going to Canada, Japan were both like really instrumental for her. She learned a lot during those excursions."
Yeah, it's interesting that a woman, Ethel, who basically was working in the 50s and 60s, and Trish, who's now in the 21st century and 20 years into the 21st century, that they are encountering some of the same issues. So, in your opinion, why do you think Canada and Japan is so big for wrestling or women's wrestling in particular? Why do you think those two countries are they just maybe more accepting than the United States as far as like wrestlers, women's wrestling or black wrestlers or
I'm not sure about Canada. I know they have like they have Stu Hart and the Hearts, so they have kind of that wrestling lineage there, and they've had I think Dino Bravo. I think he might be Canadian. So there's a few big kind of families or kind of just lineage there in Canada. With Japan is interesting because they just have a really good history of just wrestling in general and training, and the women there are just phenomenal. And then a lot of the women in Japan um, are kind of heralded as kind of low key innovators, and they don't always get kind of the same accolades or the same discussion as some of the men. You have kind of like the 4 pillars in all Japan pro wrestling. But you have some of the women who were like innovators. Some big ones like Bull Nakano. I think she did a short stint in WCW. Um, but if you watch like women's wrestling in Japan, You know, it's not dainty. It wasn't what you saw in WWF for a long time. You know how they kind of devolved into bras and panties matches until later on they got folks, even like Trish Stratus doing matches. You know, Beth Phoenix and people like them. But the women just for decades have been just like putting on like amazing matches. The training. So I think for any wrestler to go to either, but especially Japan, is just really good because there's just a certain level of talent and there's a certain level of challenge and expectation. You know, they're kind of notorious for their training. They're just really training in their dojos. Um, and for a while, the blend of MMA and pro wrestling, that line was blurred for a little bit. And also that pro wrestling, to a certain extent, is considered like a major sport. You know, Okada from New Japan, I think he was an ambassador for kind of sports, and one of the guys that was involved with marketing for the Olympics. So I think pro wrestling just in Japan is just so big and just so serious in a way. You know, you have different kind of levels and different kind of iterations of it, but just the training, expectations, everything. So I think for anyone to go there and just pick up anything, it's just a good opportunity. You'll come back, I think, better for it. Same with Mexico too. You know, getting those different styles.
Yeah, and the women, of course, in my documentary mentioned their experiences in Mexico, and Ethel talked about like how her sister Babs got stabbed in the leg by a fan in Mexico, an
Yeah,
overzealous fan, and then Marva Scott's daughter Kim talks about how Japan was not a good experience for Marva because, as you said, it was really, really brutal, and the women kept trying to throw her out of the ring and were teasing her about being black, you know, saying Negro, Negro, pressy hair, pressy hair.
yeah. I was just like,
Yeah, and
dude,
Marva ended up having a nervous breakdown and being in a sanitarium. So, you know, yeah, it's good for, you know, to toughen your skin, but I mean, for Marva, it was, you know, she ended up having a breakdown over it.
yeah,
So everybody's experience is different.
yeah. And I think it was way different for like white men, for example. You know, there's several examples of white men kind of going there and being dominant figures. Even like Hulk Hogan, he had a run
Yeah,
in New Japan. Like, you know, they kind of have, they love those just big meaty white dudes. You know, Scott Norton had a good run. Um, so it's a little bit different now, but I think they call them Gajins, or kind of just like those overseas wrestlers. But they haven't had a lot from what I've seen until recent history of like non-white foreign wrestlers going there and having big big kind of impressions. Besides like maybe like Abdullah the Butcher, who's doing like kind of just crazy matches over there. But recently, you know, you had MVP go to New Japan and have be their first Intercontinental Champion. But I definitely think there's room for kind of a more diverse mix of foreign wrestlers uh, getting that experience in Japan and not getting kind of brutalized and kind of leaving with trauma. You know what I mean?
right, right. So in Trisha's story in Indelible, did you make a conscious choice to end it with her with the wrestling match with the man? Was that to just kind of show how tough she is?
Well, that and pretty much what happened was that, and I think I mentioned this before, but we did an interview and 3 days before that match, and that was that sit down interview that we had, and then
Mm,
that match was on a Saturday, and then pretty much the week after that, she had some few matches out of state, and then the shutdowns happened. So
okay,
I wanted to end with that, but that was also I also want to end with footage that I shot. So all the matches before, of course, matches from other promotions, Florida, DC. But I kind of wanted to culminate and kind of tell the story of this match in particular as being her first title defense. And it was a conscious decision to like kind of not have narration over that. Um, besides a little bit of the backstage before and then backstage after. But I kind of just wanted to show kind of some of the big spots in the match and kind of just show off how she's improved because in the beginning it was just very simple things, and I show a couple times where um, she kind of botches something. I forgot what it was. I think there was something that was supposed to happen, like maybe like a Hurricane Rana or something, and things aren't smooth. But I want to show kind of her progression through the years, because that's about 4 years, I believe, of like in-ring action. So I wanted to show that, um, and I think, or I hope people could see that there was kind of progression in her look, her athleticism, and kind of just how her matches were.
Yeah, I thought it was cool how you opened with her showing her belt and that, her kind of laughing because it kind of made her seem humble. It's like, oh, she's showing off her belt, but at the same time, she's kind of laughing about it and, not coming across as like conceited or, I mean, she should be proud of herself for all that she's done.
Yeah,
I mean, it was cool that you kind of showed her vulnerability as
yeah,
well as her strength.
yeah. She was really cool about that. Like I said, she was really humble, even from like when I first met her, and kind of just pulled up on her, really like, hey, I want to shoot this, and even when we met that following week, yeah, she was really cool about it. That scene happened about midway through the interview. So we kind of just started, just, with some questions like, where'd you grow up? How'd you get started in training? Um, and then we started talking about the championship match. And then she says, do you want to see the belt? So she grabs it. And then that's when she's like, do you want to hold it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm holding the camera. So I was like, but then also I kind of had this face on where like, I don't want to like drop it. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I want to make people feel like they were kind of just there with her, kind of having a conversation with someone who's just like the homie, you know what I mean, in some ways.
Right.
And yeah, she's very humble. She wasn't like, oh, I'm the champion. She wasn't, like you said, conceited or boastful. She's definitely proud, and I think you saw that at the end. She talks about the work she puts in, but it wasn't like a everyone
Flossing,
else
as
is
they
a
say.
peasant. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's how Ethel and Ramona were when I interviewed them. I mean, just so humble, so accessible, just so. And a funny thing happened with Ramona. One of the interviews we did, she started talking and like she went on for like 20 minutes, and I realized, oh my God, I forgot to turn her mic on. And I finally just said, I'm sorry, Miss Ramona, but I'm going to have to ask you to repeat everything you just said.
Yeah.
And she was just so gracious. She didn't say, oh, you idiot, or I'm out of here. She's just like, okay. And then, we just did the interview over again. Did you have any kind of like production hiccups or mishaps while you were shooting Trisha's story or?
Actually, what did happen on the day of the match is that I forgot a couple things. So usually I shoot with like an external monitor,
Okay.
and I was reorganizing my camera bag, and I forgot to bring the monitor, and so I think everything came out okay. But the day of the match, I was like, crap, I don't want to leave, because I only live about 20-25 minutes away from the venue. But I don't want to leave and come back because parking is being full. Um, so I think things worked out, but I just had to be extra um, kind of mindful of how I was shooting. There's a couple things that it was funny because before all the wrestlers can get okay to compete, they have to do like a medical evaluation in the venue. So they have doctors on hand, physicians on hand to check blood pressure and get information. So I filmed a little bit. I didn't use it, but I filmed a little bit of her getting her blood pressure and checked and stuff like that. And the commission came up to me, was like, no, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, and all that stuff. But other than that, like it went fine. Like I said, it was those 2 days of shooting. All the promotions that I asked, except for one or two, got back to me and said it was cool to use their footage. So that was really good. It was good that in this time a lot of promotions put their matches up online, so I didn't have to dig very hard to get some of that of her early matches. I didn't have to go hard at all I really had to do was just Google, and all the matches I chose kind of worked, I think, with the story. So there was maybe one other primetime pro wrestling match that she had early on, and I didn't there just wasn't room for it. So I mean, the it was pretty lean. Like I said, I was able to kind of get what I had to do. So once everything was transcribed, I was just able to go ahead and edit. And that's I think I also had to. That's why I think I got it done so quickly. You know, it took like maybe 3.5 days, 4 days.
You know what's interesting is I came to DC. I did a couple of the interviews in DC. Well, I did
Okay.
one interview with Jeff Lean, the author of the book on Mildred Burke, and he's a Washington Post reporter.
Right.
And I was supposed actually the Black History professor that's in the documentary, Hassan Jeffries. Um, he kind of came about as a replacement because I had originally wanted to interview this female commentator because I really wanted to have a female voice, kind of talking about these women's place in history. And I'm not going to say the woman's name because I don't want to get sued for slander or something, but I met her at a Martin Luther King event here in Ohio. Her husband is a really, really, really famous commentator. And
Uh-huh.
she's not as famous as he is, but she's fairly well known. So I went up to her after her husband's speech and told her the story. She was like, "Oh, I'd love to be a part of it. Come to our house in DC, and I'll tell you everything that you need to know to put this story in context." I drive all the way to DC. I hate driving through mountains, so I have like a death grip on the steering wheel the whole time. I get out of my car and I look at my phone. She has sent me an email saying, "Oh, you know what? I have a conference to go to." She's a professor. She's like, "I have a conference to go to. I'm not going to be able to do the interview." And I'm like, it will only take 15 or 20 minutes. Can I just have a little bit of your time? I've come all this way. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have to reschedule." So then she ghosts me. She stops returning my emails. And then strangely, she starts following me on Twitter like a couple of years later. And I'm like, that was just so I ended up finding Hassan, who I thought he was awesome. He was
Yeah.
really, really great. But Hassan was a replacement. So I actually did end up coming to your area to do a couple of the interviews.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was good to see that. Uh, Seeing that the Washington Post reporters and what do you have to say? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what kind of camera do you shoot with? Just
I
out of
use
curiosity.
a Canon 5D Mark IV.
Okay, I actually have a similar camera now, but
Okay.
because I started filming my documentary in the mid '00s and it took me like years to finish it, so technology kept changing while I was filming it. So I had like a prosumer like Sony DV camera, the small mini DV tapes.
Yeah.
Um, so those were kind of hard to work with because after a while they kind of like they start getting they deteriorate, or when you rewind and fast forward and play too much, they get kind of crinkly. So I had to like have them transferred to like a DVD, and then it was just like the editing process was kind of a nightmare because I had all these different formats.
Mm.
So yeah, that was another challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because I think I mentioned that I do some work with the Office of Cable Television here in DC,
Yeah,
and they have stacks of like DV tapes and everything like that. Now they just keep everything on
the
SD
SD.
cards and
Yeah,
memory cards
yeah.
um, for their build cameras, but they have like just stacks and stacks of those from their previous shoots from like previous mayors and all that stuff on their archive.
Yeah, yeah, and I had like archival footage that was like on VHS that I had to hook up my computer to my. I actually still have a VCR to import it. So it was just lots of funny things like that. And I like the overall like the black and white style of Indelible. How did you? It's very it's very stylistic, kind of avant garde. How did you come? How did you decide to go with that style?
Well, I found myself kind of realizing that I was going to film in a lot of like nightclubs and stuff like that.
Uh huh.
So one reason is that there's so much contrast, so much color, and I
Yeah.
kind of wanted uh, the focus to really be on the composition and the subjects.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to remove kind of like a lot of those neon colors and stuff like that. And then the second thing was that I kind of wanted to have a sense that all of this was kind of happening in the same universe.
Okay.
So that's why I also chose the black and white. So even though like there are similar documentary series or documentary series in general that do black and white, but it's not that widespread. So I also felt that it would kind of give people an idea like, oh, if I drop like a trailer or if I do something, like they know that, oh, this is that documentary series on artists. Before it was just mainly musicians, but not just on artists or performers that's in black and white. So it kind of just, I wanted something that was cohesive. Um, and, then I just chose the yellow accents, just because my blog name is Electric Llama, so just yellow. I just chose a shade of yellow that I really liked, and I just kind of went from there.
And by the way, how did you choose Electric Llama? What's the significance of that name?
Yeah, so llama because my family is Peruvian.
Did you say Peruvian?
Yeah, Peruvian.
Okay.
So a llama is an animal based there in
Okay.
the Andes, and then electric just means like
Okay.
digital media. So I just put it together. And I just wanted to think of something. I think it just came to me like driving or maybe walking around or something. And they're just like, oh, it's just electric llama, just something that's simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's really original because I think, when you're trying to find like a production company name, there's so many names that have already been taken. Like my business, Mousetrap Entertainment, my production company, believe it or not, there's like several mousetraps. And I
Oh,
just came up with that name when I was a kid. There used to be this saying every day we're building a better mousetrap. And for some reason that just kind of stuck in my head. But when I went to, luckily, I don't think there's any other ones in like my city, but when I went to go register with the Secretary of State, I was just really surprised that there were other mousetraps. You would think that's not a famous or that's not a very common word. And why would you want your business associated with rodents? But apparently I'm not the only one who thinks. And actually, I got a piece of mail one time. This lady mistook me for this other company. And she was like, I ordered a t-shirt from your company and I sent my check in and I never got it. Like threatening to like take me to small claims court. not knowing she had the wrong mousetrap, but
uh,
yeah, it's kind of funny.
and then I came up with catch lightning is what I've been using for a while now. So I wanted to just go like as far as my business, I want to go with catch lightning, sort of a similar thing because in the middle of my llama logo is a lightning bolt and an arrow, just meaning shooting light.
Okay.
So yeah, really kind of just separate kind of Electric Llama was really like my blog and kind of like my internet alias for the most
Okay.
part. So I've been going by Catch Lightning just for my business stuff I've been doing for like companies and nonprofits and stuff like that. But it's all kind of just like I just wanted to keep things simple.
So, how did you find the for the other episodes of Indelible? How did you find those artists? Did you consciously choose to focus on musicians at first, or what was the?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of them I've already known. Like Mojo, who's the first episode. I've known her for a couple years. I had a previous series. I don't know if I mentioned, but I did a piece on her before, like 3 years prior. Um, Kyle, who's the fourth episode, Chaotic Couture. I've known them for 3 or 4 years now.
Uh-huh.
Just like from going through shows and DJing. I actually did a couple remixes for them as well. Jenna Camille, who's the episode before, I've known her for a couple years now. The band Black Folks Don't Swim, I met through a piece I had to do for work. And then I ended up like meeting them. So most of them I've known for a while. And then others I'll just hear about and I'll just be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you wanna get involved somehow? And they're like, yeah. But a lot of them I've known for a while. Like Abdul Ali, I've known for like 4 or 5 years now as well.
Yeah, they're all very original. Like I like that they're not trying to sound like everything else on the radio or just trying to do whatever is commercial just to break through. Especially
Yeah,
the one rapper. It doesn't seem like there are many successful like LGBTQ rappers. So I take my hat
yeah,
off because that's a rough field to try to be a pioneer in.
yeah. And Kyle's cool. Like yeah, they're really down. Going to the studio session, going to Rovo's place. That's Kyle's friend who's in the film, and Rovo is an artist too. But yeah, there was so a lot. Yeah, a lot of them were really open, just getting stuff. I'm really influenced by like True Life and Diary
Hmm.
and Behind the Music and stuff like that. So I
Yeah, me
really
too.
wanted it to be like just really authentic to them. You know, I didn't want it to be like a fluff piece,
Right.
because I'm not their PR. You know, I'm not out to kind of expose them, but I'm also not their PR. But I know like they're really like genuine people and cool people. So I kind of wanted to show how they are on stage and off stage.
Yeah, and the one artist, I thought it was cool that they said they're a big Prince fan because I am too, so, and saying that he was like the main influence. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, Yanju, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So who have been some of your influences like artistically? I mean, like who've influenced your style as a filmmaker?
Um, Definitely. There's a UK journalist. I can't think of his name right now. Uh, Louis Theroux.
Okay,
And he's probably like my biggest influence. He did a show a few years ago called Weird Weekends. I don't know if you're
okay.
familiar with that.
No.
But he's a British journalist. So what he would do is he would come and kind of do these documentaries on kind of subcultures in the U.S. So he did one on uh, like porn performers. He did
Okay,
one on wrestlers. He did one on a bunch. Then he's really known for this documentary he did on the Westboro Baptist Church.
okay,
And then recently, I think a couple years ago, he did like a mini series of documentaries about kind of the drug epidemic in the U.S. So I think he went to Milwaukee and a couple other places. So he's one of my biggest influences, um, because he wasn't kind of bound by feeling like he had to tell his own story. He went to another country, another continent, and he told these stories of these subcultures. But he came at it with the place of humility and kind of not being judgmental. But he also he was on air, he was on camera for these pieces. So he had a way of kind of getting the subjects to kind of let their guard down. So I kind of took those, and I think that the Weird Weekend series was done in like the late '90s, early 2000s, and then he also did some work later on. So that's probably my biggest influence. But like I said, True Life, I mentioned True Life and Diary on MTV. I watched a lot of MTV, VH1, same thing. Um, you know, watching a lot of PBS, even stuff like just watching whatever was on there, like even Antiques Roadshow.
mm,
Like
yeah,
I'm just for some reason I like it that people just looking at old stuff and story. You can just make a story out of anything almost. So that
yeah,
was just one of
absolutely.
those things. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was influenced by Spike Lee, and I like how he goes between narrative films and documentaries,
Right.
and that's something that I aspire to do as well. And I actually did not set out to become a documentary filmmaker. I always saw myself as when I was a kid, I wanted to be an author and a filmmaker, but I saw myself as doing all fictional stories that I came up with my own creativity. I didn't see myself doing like nonfiction work, and then I just came across the story of these wrestling women, and I just thought this just screams documentary.
Yeah.
So I just kind of stumbled into documentary filmmaking. But I like people like Spike Lee, and Martin Scorsese has done some documentaries, and like I think he maybe did a concert film or as well. So I like people who are versatile, that are not just like one trick ponies, that they can just do one. I mean, not that there's not anything wrong with specializing in one thing, but I like have a lot of different ideas, and I like people who are able to like you know be successful in different genres. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, so he's a good example. Ava DuVernay recently, like
Oh
how
yeah.
yeah, so like it was just insane. I've been wanting to do a fictional short myself, kind of based off because I also hear a lot of stories too, from artists, kind
Okay.
of off camera as well. And I think certain things would just be really interesting to see, and kind of in a do like kind of just fictional stories based on the stuff that I hear and that actually happened.
Like sort of like backstage stuff having to do with the music industry, or just
Yeah, just even kind of just um, stories of how those communities exist as well. Kind of just even just the relationships between like the artists in those communities too. just them
Right.
like them as people, and kind of like they just happen to do music, but kind of just the personalities there as well.
Right. Yeah. So what's up next for you? You got other episodes? Or are you just kind of waiting for the quarantine to see what
Um,
happens with that? Or
I think what I'm gonna do is kind of work on another edit of the film. I think I mentioned it on the first interview, but every time I show the film, the edit is a little bit different. And I've had a little bit of stuff that I shot um, right before the shutdown started. That wasn't the last screening, so I might do a screening. I have a couple episodes I haven't put out yet. DDM is another artist. DDM was in Kyle's episode in the beginning, helping Kyle like get ready. I have an episode on DDM. I have an episode on Miss Cam, who was a rapper in that Do Ali's episode. So she performed on that show. So I have some stuff with her that I showed in one of the screenings last November. So I have a couple of things I can put out in the meantime. Um, but I'll probably just work on the film. I have a separate documentary project on a Latinx youth theater group that I shot like 2 years ago. So I'll probably get back to working on that. So I've been a teaching artist with this theater called Gala Hispanic Theater in DC.
okay.
So I've been a teaching artist, and I just did some like media stuff for them. But for a year, I went to and helped out with this theater group called Pas Nuevo, and they teach theater to mostly high school students in the
Okay.
area in DC.
So I was wondering, like, so with Indelible, do you see that at what's your like end goal with Indelible? Is it just for it to exist as like a series for people to watch? Or are you trying to use it as like a sort of like a resume to like show this is the kind of work I, because it's excellent work. I mean, I love the black and white look and this great sound and excellent cinematography and all of that. Are you trying to use it as like like a portfolio to get clients to do work for, or do you just have this idea and you just want to put these stories out there?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I'm kind of I have enough, I think, of kind of just other stuff on my resume, kind of stuff I've done for like businesses and artists and stuff. It's kind of just I wanted to do it. I like doing it. Like at the time, a few months before I started the first episode, I was actually thinking of like kind of selling a lot of my gear because I wasn't like feeling where my career was going.
Okay.
Um, so maybe about like September or August of that year, I was just like, I don't think this is going to happen. Like, I wasn't sure if things were going to pop for me. I was like, I don't know, like what's going on, and I kind of just did it. I mean, I think it's cool if people see it and then kind of want to work with me. That's happened once or twice, but it's not like a resume builder. It's just kind of fun. I've always just like having something that's mine, and I
Mm-hmm.
can just do at my own pace. Whether I do it really quickly, rather I do it take my time. And then with this, I can kind of do both. It's something that I've been working on for like a year and a half, and I've been putting out stuff, but there's stuff I've been kind of holding on to, and then it's something I can kind of just retool, and I kind of just want to just experiment with, and kind of just sculpt into, oh, it could be something, but then I can kind of disassemble it and then reassemble it again and kind of see like what happens if I take out a segment, what happens if I keep certain interviews, and that's actually with the film too. So there's scenes from Kyle's episode that I keep just for the film, and things like that.
Yeah, I feel you like with thinking that like your career is not going always the way you want it to, because I'm the same way, because like I just want to do my own creative work. I don't want to be a I don't want to be a what do they call it, hired hand. I don't want to like go film weddings and go film events. That's not my that's not what I want to do. I just want to do my own creative work, like you said, just something for me and put it out there and make a living doing that. And it can be very frustrating when you see crap, quite frankly, getting getting all these views and getting all this play because they're doing the lowest common denominator of what the most simplest thing to attract clicks. And we're in this attention economy where there's so much competition that it's not always easy, even when you have quality work like you do, to get people to to appreciate it. So I definitely feel you on that. So what kind of what do you do to promote Indelible? I mean, I know I use social media, but I kind of realize that's not enough. Like you have to kind of place ads and try to target people who
Yeah,
are
I mean, yeah, just word of mouth, social media. The artists themselves have been a big help in promoting it. They've been very gracious in posting about it. I've had a couple write-ups. So DCist, which is a blog owned by NPR now, they did a write-up about it. Um, I think I have a couple others. I just did a podcast last week about Trisha's story.
okay.
Um, so just word of mouth, just reaching out to journalists who I think will be interested in kind of the idea. But that's it. I don't do like paid advertisements. Um, I try to just spend like as less money as possible,
Right,
as little money as possible on it.
right, right.
Because I feel like I just already spent the time and or spent the money on the gear and the laptop and everything. Yeah, just word of mouth and just kind of hoping, the people that get to see it, the artists are really happy about it. When I did the YouTube premiere, Trish was very gracious. She like shared it every day. So
Awesome.
so I would like, so I do the graphic design and everything. So I kind of just keep costs as low as possible. Um, and Trish, she shared all the stuff I made, like all the promos and trailers and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't get like tons of views. Like I don't get thousands of views. Like the I did a documentary like a few years ago on like my capoeira teacher, and I think that has like the most views. But even like in Delaware, I think there's I think the second episode or something has like maybe close to 1,000, but I get a few hundred views, nothing crazy. I'm sure like if I really worked hard at it, then I could maybe have like a bigger viewership. But it's always kind of like you have to balance between like, um, am I a creator or am I a marketer? Some are good at both. I kind of know where my lane is, and I could spend X amount of time just trying to market it, but then I would have less time on just living my life outside of just creating videos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I say this not to try to flatter you, but I mean I think your work is excellent, and even like your graphic design. Like when I looked at your Instagram, I was like, wow, I really need to step my game up because your stuff looks really really professional. So it's definitely not for lack of quality. It's just like I said, we're just in this attention economy where getting eyeballs, you really do have to work at it, and like you said, you have to balance your time because you could make a full time job out of trying to market your work, and that's why people hire publicists and hire marketing firms, is because that is a full-time job.
Yeah, and I've got, yeah, like I said, I got a couple of like really good write-ups. I'm happy about that. Like I said, I've done the screenings. So the screenings I did last year were well attended for what they were, and I think I'm more focused on like just the quality of like, do I want kind of just clicks for the sake of it? I feel like I do get people who watch it who are like who are really into it, and I think that's most important. Like even though like the Trisha Dora piece, I think it has like 300 views or something like that, but I know like the people that saw it like were really into it and they really enjoyed it, and Trish was just like really happy. She was like halfway or like the first 10 minutes into it, she was just like she texted me like, oh my god, like this is ridiculous, this is crazy.
Wow, wow.
So I think it's like stuff like that is really is like more important. Like I do still think about numbers, um, even though I know like it doesn't really matter as much, but I do want people to see it, not just because I want numbers, but I just think these are stories that I just want to get out there. But I'm happy that uh, they are out there and I can just put something out and that people enjoy it and people get a lot of get a lot out there. Actually, with Odd Mojo, a friend of mine who works for a venue in DC said, actually after seeing that, he that kind of influenced him to want to book her for a show.
Awesome.
So then that so like things like that are like way, you know, way better than it's like eating healthy consistently versus just like getting like just eating something like a burger or like like a slice
Cheap
of like,
sugar high.
yeah, just like, yeah, like a cheap sugar, like you said. It's just like there's a, like there's, I just want a quality. So I want to put out quality. I want to get people who are really like interested in it. And so
Yeah,
hopefully, you know, the numbers will come.
yeah. Yeah, and then one last question, I'll let you go unless there's something else you want to add or whatever. So as a wrestling fan, what do you think the future of wrestling is going to look like post-pandemic? Do you think it's going to be, because even matches that are, pre-recorded, you don't want to do them in front of an empty house, because I mean, so much of wrestling is the feedback off the audience. What do you think the future of wrestling is going to be?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been watching too much of like the empty arena matches. Um, I think the future is just going to be they're probably just going to do events with just less people. You won't have
Okay.
those packed crowds. I think AEW has had I think like staff members. They've had a few people ringside who just work for the company. Um, and I think they'll just phase it in. Um, yeah, it's kind of just odd watching it without the public. It's like I don't know, it just needs something like even just like an audience track, like how sitcoms have a laugh track, something. Um, yeah, I just think that they'll try to phase it in as best they can once everything subsides.
Right, right,
And I think
right,
it's just a good time just to go back and um, like look at stuff that you've never seen before. So I'll probably do that with like New Japan and DDT that I mentioned before. Just kind of just going back and just checking out stuff I've never seen before.
right. Well, Antonio, thanks again for making the time to do this. So again, so if people want to follow you, get in touch with you, whatever, how can they reach you?
Yeah, you can do that on Instagram. My Instagram is at Electric Llama, and then the Instagram for the project is at Indelible Life. So I put like trailers and stuff, but I also put out IGTV episodes of what I call them supplements. So stuff that didn't make episodes or stuff that's just not quite in episodes. I have those on that, and then the website is for the project is indelible.life. So you can just easily see all the trailers, all the episodes there too.
Cool. I hope you enjoyed the conversation between Antonio and I. I will put links to both our documentaries in the description to this video. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.